All right, Mr. Lavalley.
Are we good? On? We're live? Okay. Good evening, Dennis Lavalley. I'm the chairman of the Architectural Review Board, and welcome. We will ask the staff, if you would, to do the roll.
Absolutely. Vice Chair Jones. Present. Chair Lavalley.
Here.
Secretary Ritter.
Here.
Board Member Parsons.
Here.
Our alternates are not with us this evening. Council Member Liaison Clark. So happy to be here. And our Commission Liaison Cohn.
I don't think my mic's turned on, but if you can hear me, I'm present.
Well, the mic pick up from.
Yeah,
So
we have
up here.
a central
Oh,
mic.
okay.
You good anywhere, Ed.
All right.
You good anywhere.
All right, we do have quorum. so-
Okay, very good. Thank you. You should have had in your packet the minutes from the October 12th meeting. A motion would be in order to approve the meeting of the October 12th, 2023 Architectural Review Board minutes. Mr. Ritter has moved. Is there a second? Mr. Clark has seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved.
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Oh, you abstained. Okay, thank you, Mr. Coe. All right. And tonight we will have on our agenda a presentation for a project coming up here in the here in the town center. And then we will be looking at also just a little bit of discussion regarding the role of the Architecture Review Board. There we go, get the right words out. So that's the agenda, unless anyone else has anything else that they feel. Go ahead, Mr. Cohn.
Yes, regarding the agenda, I just want to make everyone aware that Green Street Real Estate Ventures is not part of this development at all. As with the ordinance and everything else with the city, it's Wildwood GBK LLC, which I'm the managing member of. So Tom Young, Joel Oliver will be speaking. They're working with me on this project, but it is not Green Street in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, all right. Thank you for clarifying that. Anything else as it relates to the agenda? If not, before we go into that part of it, we just ask if there are any public comments not associated with the agenda item and those other things. Any public comment from anybody? If not, then let's go. And are there any online?
There are a couple online attendees. If you are attending online and would like to make comment at this time, please use the raise hand feature. Mr. Chair, I do not see any raised
Okay,
hands.
very good. Then we will proceed now with old business. I don't know of any old business. Is there any old business anyone's aware of? If not, we will proceed to new business. And the first is the, and it's not Green Street Real Adventure. What was the name?
Wildwood GBK LLC.
With GDK?
GBK as in Greenberg Cone.
Okay.
And I'm the managing member of that LLC.
So Greenberg Cone at the intersection of Taylor Road and Main Street. So we can have the staff kind of read it into the record and begin to fill it in.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Our first agenda item this evening concerns a preliminary review of plans for a major development proposed for the Wildwood Town Center. It is a multi-family and mixed-use development. And the location of it is just to the east of B&B Theaters at the intersection of Taylor Road and Main Street. This was formerly where the Prime Place development was proposed. The project consists of one large 4-story mixed-use building with the two main sections of it connected by skywalk that will contain up to 189 multiple family units with first floor service and commercial activities. Also associated with this project, but not under review this evening, are 14 single-family dwellings on individual lots and pickleball courts on a parcel of ground to the east of Taylor Road. The overall size of this parcel of land is 11.8 acres, and multiple parcels are involved. The zoning is the second amended C8 planned commercial district. amended C8 planned commercial district with a conditional use permit C8 planned commercial district. The governing ordinance being amended ordinance 2840, which is included in your packets this evening. This project is in the downtown and neighborhood general districts of Town Center and is located in Ward 8. Tonight, the applicant is here to present a preliminary proposal for your questions and feedback to be incorporated into the final proposal that will be reviewed at the January 11th, 2024 meeting. Thus, no action is required from you this evening. If you have any questions of the department, we're available to answer them at this time. But otherwise, I will turn it over to Mr. Tom Yun here to present. Thank you.
So my name is Tom Young, representing Wildwood GBK LLC on the development side and working on the architectural design team with Ed and Joel and our partners. So I'll share my screen and kind of kick off the project and explain how we got to where we are, and then eventually we'll get your guys' feedback at the end and hear what your thoughts are. So
In sharing the screen, is that also going to be online? Oh,
Yes.
okay, okay, I didn't know if you were working from your computer, it is, so,
that's the goal. We'll see
Okay.
if we can get it to
okay.
work out. So that's good. Maybe I don't know if I can minimize this little guy. Okay, so orientation wise, we'll start off here. This is just a bird's eye view from the northeast of the current condition of the site. So as mentioned previously, this is the extent down to Manchester Road, up along Taylor, and then over Main Street over to the existing theater. The pickleball courts to the southeast. And again, the design's by others, but we'll kind of indicate what the plan is. Flip from this side to the next. So what we're proposing is a 2-bar apartment complex at Main Street and Taylor. 14 home sites to the south down along Manchester and Taylor, which again, design in the future, that's part of the site concept approval. And then the pickleball courts that you kind of see indicated, again, that's being designed by the city and their consultant. So we're really only discussing the multifamily piece, which is 189 units of apartments and commercial space and active amenity for the apartments along Main Street. So just again, to flip back and forth, what currently exists and what we're proposing. So this is a zoomed in view, and I'll kind of go through iterations and how we arrived at this design. This is what we're proposing, basically a 4-story complex that runs along Main Street, down along Taylor. It'll step at Taylor just because there's about 28 foot of fall from Taylor and Main as you work your way south down Taylor Road to where our parking ingress would be for the apartments. This is a simple massing diagram. This represents what we're looking to do. I'm going to show what was originally proposed, just to say what adjustments we made to the original site concept approval. And I'll just go through kind of one by one. So big picture along Taylor, this was the previous site massing. So there was a separate apartment complex up in the northwest corner adjacent to the theater. There was a 5-story bar up at the intersection of Main and Taylor, and then kind of an E-shaped form. And as we looked at with our development partners and really kind of studied what we wanted to provide for the site, we had some critiques of the previous plan and we wanted to make adjustments. So big picture to start off, the original concept, there was about a 25-foot retaining wall that wraps down Taylor and then turned west up along this edge of parking. So that was one thing that we wanted to try to remedy. 2 was that the separate apartment building, it makes it difficult to lease these apartments because they're not tied to interior corridor circulation to get to the interior amenities, which these developments are highly amenitized. So it was important to maybe make a connection to that building so that we could actually, the project was more feasible. 3 being the parking on the south end of the site. 1 was, it was right on Taylor. And also because of how that retaining wall wrapped up to the west, it was hard to get, imagine if you had groceries to your apartment units or some ingress point to the development. So that was one thing we were critical of and we want to make adjustments. 4, the 2 interior or exterior courtyards were kind of tucked into the insides of the large E. which made it difficult for sun and shadow, especially around a pool. So we thought, well, maybe there's a way to improve that. And 5 being that 5th floor along Taylor and Main, it would be the tallest kind of section of the building at that corner. And we just didn't know if we needed that density to actually execute 189 units. So big picture, this is where we landed, and I'll explain how we got there from this. So to start off, we'll show how we began to iterate. So 1 being, we dropped the Taylor leg 1 level because we wanted to make that pedestrian experience just improved, so that as you're walking up along Taylor Road or circulating down to the future pickleball courts, you're not staring at a 25-foot segmental concrete block retaining wall. So that was 1 important move. 2 is being along an axial connection at Eastgate, was to connect those 2 buildings with a sky bridge, which will end up being units and make some kind of architectural statement to connect it and all be 1 building. And also by doing this, we created that kind of urban facade. We minimized the setback and pushed the building out to Main, pushed the building out to Taylor. And then we were able to put the exterior amenity at the inside of that knuckle that, again, maximize sun, less shadow on the pool and amenity deck. And we were also able to get all the parking internalized and more screened from Main and Taylor. You know, where it starts to peak out on that south edge, just to hit the parking counts. We also, it's not right adjacent to Taylor. We have a nice landscape buffer with circulation up into the site, or that's our ADA circulation point up into the site from the future pickleball courts to the southeast. So those were some site moves that helped improve the positioning of not only the parking, but the exterior amenities. When we look at the massing, so we made some design moves. At the end of the 2 bars, those are kind of the premium units, and they have balconies, and we provided recessed balconies and also asymmetrical unit designs to make the ends of these 2 bars a little more important and appealing. At the Eastgate connection and terminus of Eastgate, where we have our bridge connection, we tried to create some architectural focus so that when you are traveling south on Eastgate, it is centered on that when it would have some importance. Again, it's currently planned as units with some different facade materials. And really the most important piece, and I note this is 5 because that was on the number 5 criticism of the original massing was, you know, that was 5 levels at the corner. So what we've done is we've kept it to 4 and we've really kind of opened it up. We've put our rooftop amenity at the 3rd floor. So again, if it was up at the 5th floor, like you wouldn't even know people were up there. So we brought it closer down to grade. There'd be plants, some activity, an architectural trellis, an architectural feature. And then we really broke that corner down. So it wasn't just architecture out to the perimeter. We have recessed balconies. We start to break down the scale, remove that volume from that 3rd floor. So it's an outdoor space. And then we also created just kind of an outdoor sitting area for the tenants. So all that's focused off that main entry for the apartment complex. So featured at that point at Main and Taylor, which will really be the branded entry for the development. And then as we move our way down Taylor, we have like kind of a gasket break that occurs where we're having that 1 floor step to work with facades. And then again, at the end of that Taylor leg, 2 asymmetrically placed kind of higher end units with recessed balconies. So it'll make that kind of an interesting bar. And we have an animation we'll run through and you'll see all that. Another thing that was important was with that urban facade, we kept everything in line, but we wanted to provide a lot of recessed balconies. So it wasn't just hundreds and hundreds of feet of flat facade. So everything turns back 5 to 6 feet into the building where we have nicely detailed balconies. And we're basically trying to create several different facades. I know that was part of the design guidelines for the downtown district, but little buildings that are all of the same family. Again, to not overwhelm everyone with the scale of the development. So, and you'll see that in some of the design iterations. So, and again, improving the pedestrian experience along Main Street. We have a combination of storefront and pilaster where we have our commercial spaces and our active amenity for the apartments. And then along Taylor, not only did we break that bar with a 12-foot shift in floor level, we also did incremental 2-foot steps with some internal ramping to get it to be even closer. So again, you're not looking up a hill or there's not retaining walls along Taylor as you're walking down the street that you're looking at. So context-wise, I just took some photos off Google Earth to speak about materiality, massing, and texture and color. You know, it was just with the palette that we're illustrating currently, everything's kind of lighter. So that's where we started, lighter bricks, some buffs, some light browns. Let me flip to the next slide. So again, this is just to give everybody a kind of a point of where we are. I'd like to review the animation now, and this just kind of gives you an indicator of how we're going to start. So we're starting at the southeast corner along Manchester and Taylor, and we'll kind of come up Taylor, work our way down Main Street, come in between the existing theater and the commercial space. There's a little plaza plan there that a commercial space could spill out onto with outdoor dining. But Ed had a great idea about potentially having like projections onto the side of the theater. You could have like silent movie nights or something, or some movies played while the tenant of that commercial space could activate. So it could be pretty interesting. So let me exit out of this. We'll come back to this presentation here in a minute when we want to, you know, have questions and comments. And hopefully this works for everybody. So this will fade, and like I said, we're starting at the southeast corner of the site down along Manchester and Taylor, kind of at the entry to the apartment or the single family home. So as we work our way up the street, you can see how much grade we're dealing with. Over to the left, this is the low end of the site. It's about 20 foot down from Taylor, Maine. So you'll have to ramp up to get all our ADA accessible parking spaces up to the development, just again, because there's even more ramping or even more slopes on the parking side of the development. But this is where you can kind of see, rather than having one large facade, we broke it down with a recessed balcony, having multiple materials, nice window sizes. And as we work our way up to say, you can see multiple bricks, siding types, window frames. And we tried to break down the scale of these by having some 3-story elements, some 1-story elements, some tying bands of windows together with vertical pieces, and exaggerated frames around some of the windows. So this is where that major floor break occurs with 12 foot. So that's where the building starts to step. Everything's 4 floors. We'll have nice landscape features up to the ground level of these units, with still some recessed balconies to help break that up. So this is really at Taylor and Maine. We had mentioned, you know, again, rather than having an additional level with a rooftop up on top of that 5th floor, we made it accessible off the central elevator core. So from the main program and entry and interior amenities from the tenants, you could go hop up a dual elevator core up to that 3rd floor where there'd be a club room and then an outdoor amenity space, and then a nice architectural element, trellis piece, and maybe some greenery could be growing on that. We programmed a little outdoor just sitting area for the tenants to spill out from the interior. There might be a little kitchen or programmed on the inside, or a bar area that they could come out and you could see that activity not only on the rooftop level, but down at grade 2 would be really, really interesting. And then, you know, right now we're showing a brand signage, but it could be a Blade sign on the corner of the building, something really kind of cool and interesting at that corner. So I kind of work our way down. So we're working our way down Main towards the theater. This would be the main tenant entry or front address for the development for the apartment side. And you can kind of see some of the brick textures, so multiple bricks, colors, offsets to give some nice relief and shadow. And then again, on that top floor, trying to break it up and break down the scale so it's not 4 floors of the same materials. This is that bridge at Eastgate. So we showed a couple options in the package for directions we could take, but for now we showed kind of a projected surface that is on axis with Eastgate on both sides. So Eastgate no longer continues through the site down to Manchester. What we have is like an auto course. So you can pull in as a tenant or get it picked up by rideshare and Uber, or dropped off, or a friend could pick you up. But you basically pull in under this bridge, and you'll see this on the opposite side of this animation, where you then have a roundabout. You can turn around, pick somebody up, and then exit the site. So this is an ingress egress point for that surface parking, but not a main thoroughfare. So another thing we did by breaking up these masses with these recessed balconies was we also made a shift in materials. So again, as you're walking down Main Street, you know, we're trying to break it up so that it's not 300 to 400 feet of the same thing over and over. Kind of continue down. So this is where our Main Street starts to step down 2 to 3 feet as you work your way towards the theater. So in theory, those commercial spaces that are planned for that west end of that bar are starting to get taller and taller. So we're stepping floor grades to make that work so they're accessible from the sidewalk. But that's what these little entries kind of signify. And rather than having a balcony or rail with somebody's furniture right behind it, we'd have some kind of cool branded metal element that you see in the rendering. So we don't have the theater fully modeled, but you can kind of see this represents, that also has an architectural feature on axis with, I believe it's Fountain Place. Is that the name of that street? So we kind of did a similar thing with our bridge. But as you turn the corner, this plaza would have outdoor dining tied to that commercial tenant. And like I said, Ed had a great idea about maybe projecting on the side of that theater. So as we turn around the site, I know part of that site development plan was where trash was planned. So we currently have 2 trash kind of move-in locations that are actually within the building footprint. So right as you turn this corner behind some of these landscape screens, there'd be 1 garage access point with internal trash compactors for the residents and for that commercial space at the end of this bar. We did kind of, we wanted to have some kind of like spike of color. So right now we're showing kind of a bronze, burnt orange kind of accent where these bump outs occur. We didn't do any bump outs on the Main Street or Taylor side. We did more recesses because we viewed it more of an urban facade. On this side, I think it's more important because it's really viewed from a further distance to have maybe some elements that pop up above the parapet line and color shifts and changes. This is where you'll see the pool area. Right now, pool design is the concept that'll be defined and refined as we move forward. But it occurs that inside corner, no longer surrounded by 4 to 5 levels of architecture, but open and plenty of sun to hang out around the pool throughout the day.
Back up for a second.
Yep.
What's right behind the pool?
So you can kind of see how grade's starting to fall. So right now, we elevated that pool terrace so that it's accessible, and we can go over the plans in a second, but everything on that first floor where we indicated the entry for the apartment complex, like it's all kind of open air, like activity, kitchen areas, bar areas that will overlook the pool from that level. And then you start to step down in sight. So just below, you can kind of see we drop about 10 feet to what is a dog park, a dog run for the tenants. And adjacent to an ingress egress point. This is that second access point for the tenants for move-ins, but also trash. So you're not running trash halfway down Taylor. There's multiple drop points within the development. And just more as we continue to work our way around, we tried to have plenty of recesses, and I call them gaskets, but like how you break up this masses so it's not, again, just one long flat facade. And then as we turn the corner, we'll kind of hop up into a bird's eye just to give an overview of the site. There'll be some covered parking. We're more concerned about the architecture at this point, but the idea is there are options for covered parking on that parking field. But for the most part, that parking field is really screened by either the architecture or by landscape. So that's what we have in terms of the animation. I could certainly hop to slides of the submittal or talk about anything in more detail as needed. Or if you want me to hop back into that animation and look around, we can. So pull this back up. Questions or comments, or do we want to look at plans or commercial space, or where do you all want to start?
Who would like to start? How many elevators are in this complex?
So there's currently, let me pull the plan up. So when you do a surface park concept like this, you have to have multiple ingress points. So it's easy. You can have your groceries and get into the building quickly. So at the low end of the site, we have an ingress point. So there's a stair access, but also ADA access point. So you get into your stair or to an elevator core here. There's 2 at the main intersection of the Taylor and Main Street leg, right adjacent to the entry. So again, those feed up to that 3rd floor rooftop amenity space. So we want to have 2 at that inside corner. And then down at the far west end for this parking field, you can access the building here and get it into an elevator core and go right up to your unit as well. So right now there's 4 currently planned.
Not on the East Gate thing, nothing in that area. When you talked about it being a drop off with the sort of thing, it would just occur to me that would be an interesting place if you've got people coming down and get dropped off.
There's potential to maybe shift an elevator down. There was some internal debate about 2 at that main inside, because this is really, everything in orange here will be pretty open. So there might be a seating area here. So if somebody's picking you up or you're getting dropped off, you would come down from that core and then, you know, go over to this place and hang out. There might be a little coffee bar or something there. So the idea being everything in orange would really be open, active amenity. So not only from Main Street, but also just looking out to the pool and, you know, pool table areas, those types of things.
Well, I mean, I was thinking, I'm not sure if you, I'm thinking if someone's in an apartment there and they want to get dropped off or picked up, it would be convenient if they're being, if there's an elevator right there, if they're on the third or fourth floor.
Yeah, that may make
Oh,
sense.
okay, all right, okay.
And we can talk. I know we'd always targeted 4, and the question was whether you put 2 at the inside corner or if maybe there's a better place programmatically for them to be placed about the plan. But yeah, absolutely, we can discuss that.
There's a sprinkler system throughout.
Correct. So when you do this type of framing technology, it's fully sprinklered.
Is Main Street sufficient as far as width and everything else is, and you know, the increased traffic that's gonna be going up and down Main Street out here? Is it, I mean, it just seems pretty narrow. I mean, as it currently is, and now you've got a lot of diagonal parking and, I mean, there's some there
Yeah.
now, but.
Yeah, and we didn't anticipate any changes on Main Street, and we do have the building set back in line with the theater. On adjacent sites across the street, the buildings are pushing a little bit further, but that's because they had a landscape buffer and they were addressing with ramps how they were gonna access multiple points in some of those retail spots. So for now, we're not showing widening Main. And really, we envision the main vehicular access point for the development would be probably down along Taylor or Eastgate getting dropped off, or there will be we're tying into the existing movie theater parking. So there's 3 major access points into the parking lot, if that makes sense.
When I was driving here earlier, there's a ton of streetlights along Taylor, a lot of streetlights along Main and stuff, but I don't see them on your depiction here. They're not coming down, are they?
No, that's probably just my lazy modeling, but yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Did you give any thought to maybe doing some roof line changes, or it just seems like a lot of the same thing,
Yeah,
long distance?
I thought if anything, we talked about maybe like potentially along Main, like maybe doing different colors of materials because we started to do that at the base here where we had like a darker brown,
Yeah,
more of a buff brick, but maybe that's something we do on the upper side of.
yeah. It just seems a little like unfinished at the top.
Yeah.
Do you
Can I
have
ask-
any commercial commitments for the first floor? Any tenants committed?
We're having some conversations, but it's really too early for us to get anybody to commit at this point.
Yeah,
Can you
and
ask how long that longest section of building is?
this longest section here along.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I could get you that answer. It might take a minute though.
My only concern is, not my only concern, but one of my concerns would be that's a straight shot corridor. That's a terribly long thing to look at.
The nice thing is, and we could provide additional views is that in the animation was with all the balconies, the hope is there's a lot of shadow and depth and,
I
As you-
wasn't actually considering the exterior. I think you've done very well
Yeah.
on the exterior. I was considering that interior corridor.
corridors.
It's a
Yeah.
rifle range.
I did student housing too in the past, and what we would do is break some of those corridors up with like activity centers for kids to get together and congregate in natural light.
Someplace to bring in a
Yeah.
little light, perhaps.
Yeah, that would help.
I'm also concerned about the entry on Main. Well, not Main, yeah, it is Main. In the middle. If I'm the fire marshal,
Yeah.
I'm gonna wanna get in through there.
Yes.
And I
That's-
don't think you have enough height.
Right now, we currently don't. There's a move we could make where we remove that level of units and we could put a little single access stair if we need to. But we should have conversations with the fire district and
Yeah, I think the previous concepts were the outdoor patio section next to the building. That would actually be a path a fire truck could take if it needed to.
Yeah.
And then they have the Taylor access also, so.
Is there one at the end of the building between the theater and the end of the building?
That's where the exterior patio is, so it wouldn't normally be used for pedestrians to drive through, but in an emergency situation, a fire truck, would be.
I'm sorry, but I'm not supposed to talk anyway. The theater parking lot is directly connected to our parking lot. So you can get through the theater through access to all our parking.
Yeah, I don't know if you can see that in this image. We have a circulation point, a pathway that connects into this existing walk that brings you up to that plaza, but the idea being this parking would all be connected. So access point 1 being down along Taylor, access point 2 for really vehicular access to the tenants and drop off and so on. And then, if we could get this plaza connection to work out for emergency vehicles or coming down behind the theater.
You are completely correct there, that will be approved by the fire marshal before we can do anything.
Yeah. Ms. Clark?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I have a number of questions, but I wanted to start with where on your, of your apartments are the accessible units located?
So every unit with Fair Housing Act, like there's type A and type B units. So type B, everything is adaptable in the future. Basically, every unit in this development will be adaptable, and then everything else, there's a percentage you have to hit. So we will hit the HUD housing standards for A type. So if I flip to the plan, you'll see they're just kind of single line diagrams at this point, but the building is planned that it wouldn't have to be stretched to adhere to any of those requirements.
And they would be located near the elevators?
Correct. All of our ADA parking is currently planned. Let me pull that plan up so you can see. So currently, all of our ADA stalls on the civil plan are shown up in this direction, just because there's multiple access points, but the idea being you'd come in here and then we could plan the units. That's all beyond concept, I'd say for sure.
Chair, if I may follow up.
Sure, please.
I'm not speaking of the parking spaces.
The units, the interior units, it's basically any unit wherever we need to place them, and that would be part of the full like ADA accessibility studies, like that would be defined beyond a concept level. But there's room in these plans that, again, every unit in here currently is type B, and then we have length already planned in the development to get whatever we need as far as the minimum requirements.
And where are the 3-bedroom units?
We're currently not showing any 3 bedrooms in our program. And I don't know if you want to speak to the market studies.
Yeah,
we started there and then we had a full market study done.
Yeah, the unit mix that's currently shown is what we believe the market wants, and it doesn't currently have any 3 bedrooms. 3-bedroom units in St. Louis are a little bit of an anomaly.
So all 1 bed, no studios, all 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms.
Okay, I must have read something wrong. I thought it said.
It says we could have 3 bedrooms.
I think there was some discussion on our end if there was some interest in maybe developing a couple of unique 3 bedrooms on the top floor. If we got there, we could.
The flexibility.
We have the flexibility to do that. The 189, right now, we're currently targeted at the 189, and it's kind of like if you decide to make 3 bedrooms at the top floor, do you extend one of the bars to still hit that 189? At this point, we're just showing 1 beds and 2.
Why is 189 the magic number? Just curious.
That's what was the site was zoned for, yeah, as a maximum.
Chair, would you like for me to go
Please,
through my
continue.
list?
Yep, go through your list. I've got a few things to do later.
The dog run, I guess I'm asking the department, dog runs are not acceptable in Wildwood?
That is correct. I think it could be a dog park, but not technically a dog run. And yeah, I think it's a technicality as far as the language would be concerned.
Yeah, if I pull the site plan, it's basically just a fenced area where the tenants could bring their dogs down and socialize with other tenants and have them within a fenced area that's not around the pool.
But it's not a place where you're gonna go out and leave your dog for 4 or 5 hours.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't look very large either.
Yeah, it's And I know I still owe you a dimension question on the length of some of those hallways, but
It's really a function of if you don't correctly plan those areas in a community like this, then dogs using an area will kill grass, and there's now pretty scientifically engineered systems for using the right kind of microband turf surface that has a correct drainage underneath it, so it's sanitary, there's no smell issues. And it just makes it easier for the management company to keep it clean and, you know, really operating well versus people going all over the place. And
I guess I would ask the department, what is our definition of dog run?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to get you that information.
I think the idea is it is like approximately 120 feet long by 15, 20 feet. So you could take your dog out there and throw a ball and they could run, chase it. But there's plenty of walkable zones and connected walkways that exist that, you know, if you really want to go for a walk, you take your dog through the district.
Next question would be the delivery trucks for the businesses and for like furniture. Where do they go? You wouldn't want them stopping on Taylor Road and delivering things.
There's two, where I showed those kind of two vehicular access points. There's a dock or an overhead door here and here, so internalized, not on the primary facades. So these aren't massive moving trucks. Typically, they're more box trucks and they pull up. It's not a full 4-foot dock. And they'll have a little pull-out ramp that they can move in their furniture. So the idea being here and here, if it is a larger truck, there'd be an access point. I guess they could temporarily mark off like an ingress point down here where we're accessing our parking lot off, you know, public property. But usually it ends up being these smaller little garage doors that pull up and you pull up a, you know, a U-Haul box truck.
But that's strictly for delivery for the commercial things, not so much if people were trying to move furniture or other things to other floors, an elevator and.
That delivery is for move-in, like the smaller scale commercial developments, like that are 3,000, 2,000 square feet, like a lot of that stuff is brought in on dollies for the front doors. There are access points, same thing where at this dock location, for the commercial tenants are really positioned down here along Main. So same thing, they have access to that trash area. So if it's larger stuff that's coming, you know, mid-afternoon and not 6 in the morning, they could access through that garage area.
But it is available for tenants who maybe wanting to move further in.
Yeah, all the moving in would occur off these two access
Oh, okay,
points,
yeah,
so
that-
here
yeah.
and here.
Yeah.
So nothing, they're not parking moving trucks out on Main Street or Taylor or anything like that.
My last question for right now is, what do you have businesses that are interested, or do we have, you know, people wanting to, do we have done studies on how fast we think these are gonna fill up?
the commercial space.
Yes.
So we've had some preliminary conversations. The reality is, the building has to still be fully designed and built, so nobody's gonna commit, you know, 2.5 to 3 years out, you know, to sign a lease for space. We've definitely had, you know, interest from the kind of tenants you want to have in the space, which is really what you're looking for. Is, you know, does the market interested?
Is there a limit to what kind of vendors you would have in the building?
I mean, it's what's governed by the zoning code in the downtown district, so we're not envisioning doing something that would require a conditional use permit or anything like that.
Any further, Ms. Clark?
No, that's all. Thank
The,
you.
the intent of it's just 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom is you probably do not have, it's not really geared much for families at all then. Am I correct on that? It's gonna be empty nesters or singles or
Young
mingles.
professionals, that's generally the case.
We want to speak to the market study, and that's what we see is, if it is, it's young families that maybe are starting off to eventually, you know, buy a home.
How big are they units? Approximately.
They range in size from 650, 675 up to like 1,250 square feet, the larger 2 bedrooms. So really the premium units would be on the corners, just because there's multiple facades, multiple opportunities for windows and views. And
I like what you've done with the rooftop on the corner. It would be nice if you could incorporate a few more of those maybe.
Yeah.
We have
here's the,
189 units. It seems like that's not enough rooftop for that many people.
So this is that first floor. We talked about the building entry, that patio space. Here's that dual elevator core, so I'll just flip to. It's over on the other side, sorry, just a sec here. So right now, the idea being that's 1,270 square feet of rooftop terrace. It is easier to place multiple rooftop terraces rather than growing one too large because you end up having to provide multiple egress points and they have to be so far apart. So it gets difficult, but in our experience, 1,270 square feet for a nice little rooftop with a club room, with a little bar area, a place for food, or if you're hosting an event, you could have, sandwiches out and things like that. That was the idea. And it'd be fed right off that elevator core. So you could go down to the bar downstairs or go down the pool and then tell everybody you're going up to the rooftop patio that overlooks the kind of the downtown area. There was many conversations about where that could be placed, and we thought that iconic corner is kind of.
No, I like the
branded-
corner. I just think maybe maybe more.
Well, I wondered too
To
about
break-
whether other
yeah, to break
recreational
up the-
area, I mean, that's why I was a little bit trying to figure out what your target audience was, because you've got a lot of rooftop area, and
Yeah.
I don't quite know what all those city requirements are, but I guess the two things that occurred, well, actually, three things that occurred to me for that rooftop area, and some of them, realize there may be cost, but there may be savings, was solar,
Yeah.
green roof, and recreation. And in fact, I'm gonna go to the solar first, not only on the roofs, but for that parking area, you had the covered parking, you didn't talk as much about it, but the covered parking area, assuming you could get through whatever the city has in terms of requirements for solar, that strikes me as an ideal place to have solar energy. I mean, I've seen other places where they do very nicely with these solar type installations. And maybe even also beginning to accommodate, I mean, maybe it's early, depending how long, or the whole idea of being able to plug in electric vehicles or something at some point. I'm just trying to think to the whole environmental component as we move ahead, whether those can be factored in.
So I've been to several P and Z meetings here now. I'm kind of scared to talk about solar. So the issue you have with solar is two things. You're governed by your electrical provider. Ameren's rules are pretty different than other people's. So generally in multifamily, the struggle we have with doing significant amounts of solar is, if you think about how a building like this works, every tenant has their own electrical meter. So tenants pay their own electric. So your house panel really doesn't use that much power, and you can't resell Ameren's power, right? So when you are generating solar, it's plugged into the grid, right? So once you use what your house panel uses, what they buy it back at is the numbers don't work. In large commercial buildings, it works really well because you have a huge amount of house usage and it offsets that. That kind of evolves all the time. So it's something we watch very closely. We have done a lot of solar on commercial buildings. And it's a math game. So we always evaluate that, and that's very important. The other struggle that you have with, you think about how you use the roofs in these buildings, is all of those little boxes you see are the condensers, because nobody wants condensers on the ground, rightfully so. So we put the condensers on the roof, so they're screened, there's no noise, and you have to, Ryan will tell you have so much walking capacity around them. So when you start thinking about what else can you do on roofs, because it's a big space, you run out of space. really
Plumbing
fast.
vents,
Yeah.
sewer gases, like there's just a lot going on up there. And plus, if you spend all this money on this rooftop and you put it up, eventually, or the initial diagram was up on a 5th floor, like you wouldn't even know it was there other than maybe an architectural trellis. The idea of kind of breaking down that corner and that volume is you actually see what's going on up there.
Yeah, and I appreciate the architectural. I was just saying from the standpoint that, and recognize cost factors involved there, but amenities that might be adaptable for the community that you're making the units for.
And one thing we love about Wildwood, one reason we're so excited to work on this project, is Wildwood has so much great outdoor amenities as it is. Versus if you're doing an urban infill project somewhere where you don't have a lot of green space, you maybe don't have access to trails. I mean, this is a jewel because people that live here will have access to the trail
Bike
systems, the
trails,
walk,
hiking
bike,
trails.
the parks. I mean, all of those things, you kind of want people to get outside and enjoy all of those things that the community has to offer too. So that's an important difference out here in this.
Well,
market.
and then the other is the standpoint of potential green roof type things. Science Center, some of these places have those where I don't know what all the costs are in terms of the maintenance, but in terms of absorption of rain and whatever, so that it's not going into the system.
Yep.
Environmental, again, wildwood is, so just some suggestions or some thoughts, I guess I would, and it sounds like you're at least thinking somewhat in terms of solar, but,
And we do evaluate green roofs and blue roofs whenever we're doing these. MSD's regulations are very stringent on how they manage stormwater runoff and water quality
yeah.
control. Another great benefit of this site is thankfully, it was very well thought out, the detention that's in place. You know, a lot of times the reason we're evaluating it is if we're having to do like massive underground detention. I mean, we do some projects that the underground detention systems are so large you could drive a car in them, right? So then when you're doing the math of doing a system like that versus a green or blue roof or above ground detention, it's kind of the math accessibility, how you manage that. When you add all that additional weight on the roof, it kind of is a rippling effect of how you construct the building and the maintenance and how it interacts with the condensers is generally what we run into.
A lot of it does come down to like rents you can get. And if you start to put green roofs on a roof that nobody can see, you're pulling that money out of the facades or something else that we really care about. I mean, we'd love to do all that stuff.
I understand. Yeah.
And sometimes it's easier on commercial, especially if you got a commercial office or a headquarters that like really is trying to sell that idea of green technology.
They're great questions and not everybody's thoughtful enough to ask us about.
Yeah,
it. We spend a lot of time talking about these things
Yeah,
internally,
just-
so.
Go ahead, please.
What about direct TV dishes or any other kind of TV dishes?
Yeah, no, so we always have a bulk service agreement with AT&T, so that technology has progressed amazingly. I mean, think about how it used to be if you moved into a new house, right? You have to go there and get the box and the equipment and figure it out. So the way it works now is every unit has what's called I think it's called a media cabinet. So it kind of looks like an electrical panel. It's usually in a closet and it has that little router and those things in it. So when you move in, it just works. Tenant never has to do anything. It has their internet, it has their TV, it's just there, and it's just easy.
But a single service such as just AT&T, or will tenants have the option?
So that's a good question. So generally, you're going to you're going to sign a bulk service agreement with one provider, but other providers have the opportunity, like if you moved in and you want a Charter instead of AT&T, you know, Charter could run a line to that if they wanted to. But one of those services, AT&T as an example, is who's there kind of servicing it kind of baked in. And you get the tenants get a better rate that way because of the volume of it.
Something I'm not sure if it applies here, it was in this, but you're only talking about that building, so I maybe this is premature. I noticed on page 4 of the documents we were set, it talked about the single family dwellings. And I was trying to understand, there's some finished floor elevations of their front porches that are 18 inches in height above the adjoining sidewalk grade. I mean, are we premature because this isn't even part of the proposal? I mean, it is in this document, but I was.
And the single family home proposal, I think, would come in separately under a separate process, separate submittal, separate approval. So
Okay.
it's lumped in here because the whole site plan approval was together.
Okay, well, because my only observation was when we talked about the 18 inches in height, again, we're ADA type concerns is the accessibility and it might require a ramp or something like that. And again, I don't remember if it was the houses or that. And if I'm premature, you can tell me that. On page 5, it talked about a building facade where there'll be a garden or screen wall installed. And I wasn't sure if that was for the houses or if that was for this.
I believe the design intent was like, if you were gonna have a large void along Main Street in the architecture, like they wanted to have that urban frontage, so they wanted pilasters or a landscape wall, correct me if I'm wrong, like that, as a planner, I think that was the intention.
But it's not
For
necessary.
the larger building or the houses?
For the larger building, like, that was part of the design, like, they want that not zero lot line, but close to it facade out of the street, so that's what we've shown. We didn't pull it in or have I think if you pulled a big chunk out of this corner or something, then they would want some kind of architectural element to establish that edge. But we
Okay,
didn't, we
yeah.
maximized the frontage.
Okay, yeah, I mean, what's kind of coming to me, you got a bit of a wall, you're kind of closing out. I like the idea of feeling it's open. And that's why I thought if it was around the houses, I'm thinking in community, you don't want those walls that kind of wall you out. I did like your comment in terms of the integration of the art features. Because you also, yeah, you talked about the boundary garden wall or retaining walls or fences with the setbacks, and I just wasn't sure how tall the walls were, and again, that openness versus walls. Walls tend to tell me it's not open.
I think this patio is kind of an example of it, like where we show a short landscape wall with some nice plantings, and that would all be designed by the landscape architect. But the idea being like, that still establishes that urban edge, but it's, you know, not just a green
It
space.
defines it a little bit.
Yeah.
All right.
But I think that's, and I speak to the city planners, but I think that was the intention, like, if this volume was to go away, there would have been a continuation of the pilaster elements or something that you could pass through to a little courtyard space, but you're still establishing a facade, if that makes sense, in an urban condition.
And I was trying to understand all the parking stuff and so forth. How many parking spaces are you anticipating?
Is it, what was it, 1.8 per unit? Is that,
What is shown on this plan matches what the
Or-
ordinance contemplates. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but it.
I don't remember the
We
number off the
exceed.
top of my head, but it.
yeah, I
meets
know we
requirements.
exceed whatever the
Yeah.
requirement is.
Okay, only because then I also saw here some sort of a 15% marked parking space reduction to require ratios, but I didn't, I'm looking on page 7, if that helps you with on DI, and I try to know 15% off of what and what impact that has in terms of parking when you've got 189 units and then commercial as well. That's why I was trying to.
There's cross access easements with the movie theater with an additional 50 parking spaces. So we have, the ordinance, for multifamily is 1.5.
Okay.
When I originally made the proposal, I understood that that is not enough. So I came in at 1.8. And then I negotiated with the owner of the movie theater to allow for another 50 parking spaces to be shared with the theater. Based on the fact when the theater was constructed, we reduced the seating capacity by greater than 50%. So the theater was overparked by a large amount. So to give up 50 parking spaces to be used, by everyone, including the apartments, was a no-brainer.
We've also street parking in town center, the parking garage down the street. The department didn't feel that parking, would be an issue.
Okay.
And across the street where the Walgreens really is kind of a
Correct.
landscape wall, so there's no active use there. They have their own parking kind of around the corner, so. Future commercial spaces would.
And I realize it's not part of this, but I'm just trying to understand how it all plays. The pickleball court then is being developed by the city? Or is it that it's dedicated to the city will be developing it?
So the city is working with the developer to, I think that the city designed it, but
Yes,
you were
that's right. The
developing
city's
it,
working on
right?
design, but we
Yeah.
would be responsible for constructing.
Oh, okay, all right. I try to understand that relationship. I just saw.
We just showed something in the bird's eye, but it.
Oh, I
Just
understand.
like the
It's
single
bird's
family,
eye,
it's like the.
But it's public use.
Yeah.
It's not just limited to the residents of the,
Right.
okay,
There'd be a parking field associated with it.
yeah, all right. This may be more of a city ordinance, but I'll just sort your way, whatever. I saw under the sign regulations, and I'm thinking with the small commercial, whatever, there was a reference to no advertising temporary or portable signs should be authorized, but sometimes people, you got a commercial operation and you got a sale and you're trying to draw people in or whatever, is that restricted from that because of the nature of it, or?
We do have some temporary signage allowances in our regulations, but again, all of that's addressed outside of the.
I know it's outside the proposal, but I'm just trying to understand though how it all interplays, so,
Yeah, we do allow some temporary signage within the regulations, but
okay, all right.
So as far as like the building signage, is that, in other municipalities, we've showed concepts, but then always, I know there's the signage package submittal, but would there be a follow-up ARB meeting for what the actual brand and signage would be for the development? Does that make sense?
most of it would not require
Okay.
architecture review approval. Most of, provided it meets the city's regulations, I believe that wouldn't be a requirement.
We showed something on that corner, but the reality is like, we'd have a branding consultant, we'd come up with a name for the development and then.
Correct, yeah, none of the
Provided,
signage would be included as part of this package.
I think those are my questions or comments. It's hard. Oh, sorry.
Excuse me, I have questions for the two of you. Do all the materials that are on the exterior of the building that they're anticipating fall within the guidelines of town center.
Yes, or they will. The city hasn't had a chance yet to review the plans. So we haven't reviewed them thoroughly and provided comments to
The only thing that surprises me is metal pin.
yes, so I believe that those would be allowed. And there's a limitation, I believe, of 3 different types of materials on the buildings in town center, with like the heaviest being at the bottom, and from, you know, just a general overview, that seems to meet those. And so, yeah.
I think that's the way we looked at it. It is a long building. It's really filling in what has been an empty corner for a long time. But like, I'm sorry, it shows one way on my screen, but not on the. So to me, you know, is this one building with 3 materials, you know, and this is a different, you know, they're never connected visually. So I think that was the important point, is we turned the corner around Taylor. We wanted to add more complementary detail or materials than just the limit of 3. And same thing around the parking lot side. That made sense. It's like if you really limited it to 3, to me it would come off as a very big building that looked the same everywhere you looked.
Yeah.
So I get the intent of the code and the spirit, but I don't think that's exactly what the goal is on a larger building.
Ms. Clark?
Thank you, Chair, for recognizing me. I guess I look at it, and I'm not an architect.
Yeah.
I'm a chemist. So I'm looking at the pizzazz. Where is it? Where's the, you know, it looks to me like one side of the street on Main Street has a lot of reddish colors.
Yeah.
And then on this side, it's so different. It looks
I think the-
plain, and I like the colors on the back side in the parking lot area where you've got some more red mixed in there, so it gives it a little bit of depth or something.
I think when we looked at the Main Street side, there was a lot of, in terms of brick color, like lighter. There is some reds on this development
Mostly.
across the street. Like Walgreens, Anytime Fitness were all those kind of tans and buffs and light browns. The theater, light colors. So that was our intent, was start there. At the recessed balconies, we'd have a darker material. Like, so we were trying to make that kind of pop. And then to me, because brick has some permanence to it and it looks good. And if you detail it right with shadow and changing materials and offsetting bricks, like, I think it could look really nice, but contemporary too, like contextual, but contemporary, large windows on the Main Street facade and then down along Taylor. But on the backside, we thought that was the place to maybe pop color and have something that wasn't the Main Street of this district, if that makes sense.
And make sure it's timeless.
Yeah, timeless, where the parking lot facades are really viewed more from a distance and really by the tenants. So that's why we thought maybe they would.
I just think it doesn't match the other side of the street.
Yeah,
But there are balconies there or not? I can't readily.
Yeah, so everywhere where there's one of these recesses, there's balconies for each one of those units. So as you work your way down Main Street, you know, a row of balconies, the bridge connection at Eastgate, balconies.
Well, I guess, but those balconies are attributable to the units or they're common?
Those are units.
Unit balconies.
I guess what I'm getting at is many people like to have plants on their balcony, so they would each have, if they wanted to have plants or be able to sit out or, and it makes it look more livable
Yeah.
if you have the opportunity and have folks able to provide that. So that's what I guess I'm trying to understand, if that's what is provided for there.
Yeah, really the only big exclusion you can't have is like a barbecue grill or Smith Flames. But you know, some people store their expensive bicycles sometimes
Yep,
or plants or.
Mhm.
And
chair.
that's part of that market study and experience too, is like, some people don't want a balcony and they'll have the identical unit where that facade gets pushed out and they get like a little area for home office, you know, because they're not losing a 6-foot by 12-foot space. So that then it gets programmed in the unit. So, I just like the look of recessed balconies. I think it's nice to look down a building and see the recess and the depth and the shadow. It helps to, you know.
So you mentioned it's a detail, I realize, but is there a capacity for somewhere for barbecue grills or people who,
Yeah, we usually do an outdoor kitchen area near the pool.
okay,
There's generally some type of facility to cater to bicycles. So there's interior secure bicycle storage,
Okay,
usually some kind of bicycle repair station, bike wash. There's usually pet wash stations that people can utilize for their pets. They're kind of some of the things that we think will do well out here, that people would want.
And back to the brick, I mean, we could come to the next meeting with a couple different options on brick colors and materials. So just based on some of the feedback we're getting, I mean, that's what I anticipate is hear what you all have to say and come back with some additional thoughts.
The commercial space is only on Main Street in the bottom.
Correct.
How much of town center commercial space is vacant right now?
I honestly don't know that offhand. I can look into it and see if we have an estimate based off business licenses or something.
That is the difficult part. It's like programming that because you're,
Mhm.
you know, you're providing it and taking away potential revenue from units.
Right.
And hopefully we can have a tenant there because that's part of the zoning.
Well, unfortunately, the math is changing the right way. As additional single-family homes are approved near downtown, adding this creates bodies which support kind of retail, food and beverage. So that's
189 units, you know.
it's helpful for the whole kind of downtown area to have those additional bodies. You know, people go down and walk, be really accessible.
And the potential tenants we have talked to, like, they're excited, like we've had them in the office and showed them the animation and the outdoor patio space by the theater and talked about, you know, movie nights and those types of things. So there's certainly interest.
Sure, lovely. Thank you. So how many tenants have been interested? What kind of interest have you seen?
Are you talking for the apartments?
These apartments?
So I don't know if you want to
You
speak
just
to the
said-
market study
Well,
and
we're not talking directly to people who would live here yet. We're talking more to the management and leasing company that works with people like that. And then they're the ones who are, I've been doing this for 23 years, but I've never leased an apartment to anybody. So I go talk to the people that lease apartments to people all day long because that's what they're good at. And they're very bullish that, you know, they see a real void in the market for new, modern, heavily amenitized kind of options for people.
That brings up another point. I mean, maybe this isn't for this group, but what in the in Wildwood right now, how many apartments do we have? Are we at capacity with what we have now? Are we in need of more apartments?
Anecdotally, all of our data would show that there is a lot of demand. What's here is generally pretty old and is very full. So
I visited, there's like 3 apartment complexes within the city limit, 2 in the city limits, plus the one that used to be the go-kart track. Last time I visited them, there was a waiting list, and they are dated.
with the costs that we have in Wildwood generally, even though Missouri is generally the lower cost state, but if teachers, other moderately priced dwelling units, to what extent are any of these gonna be, if they want either 1 or 2 bedroom maybe, but how well does that address that component of society that needs maybe a more moderately priced dwelling unit?
we believe that generally these would be affordable to people that would want to, I'm not sure exactly, and it's not in any way subsidized housing.
No, I
Shape,
didn't
or
necessarily say
form.
subsidized, but yeah, and I didn't know what you're forecasting the rents to be in relationship to, yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of people here are wealthy but we have folks who work in art and,
We believe this would be in line with what the market would demand. I don't have rental information with me, because I know we were talking about it tonight, but you know, we believe it'd be appropriate for comparable projects like in Chesterfield or in Baldwin or, you know, kind of surrounding communities.
I want just to address rents just for a second. I'm not really supposed to speak, but anyway, you know, when you look at the market rate rents, you know, like on Highway 6440, you know, Ruth Chris's and all that. You have a developer that had to go in, buy the land and build the project. We have a unique situation here. We're not buying any land. We've owned this since the 1980s. So we can factor that in to our cost. Our cost per square foot per unit will be less than which you would anticipate paying at the Ruth Chris's, behind the Chesterfield Library. We can easily be below those costs. As I just mentioned, we're not buying any land.
Please.
Yes, sir. Wanted to ask you a question about trash in the building. When you're taking your trash out, do you take it downstairs to the?
We do trash chutes, so there's trash chutes in both those spots, and there's generally separated for trash recycling.
And I did a little estimate on how long I think that longest section is. It's like 350 feet.
So one of the newest amenities that people have in new apartment buildings are trash porters. So you pay whatever per month if you want. You can put your little trash bin outside your door at 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning, and somebody will get your trash for you and put it down the trash chutes. So
That's interesting.
Can I get that at my house?
I wish my kids would do that.
But currently, there's a chute planned in this location, again, adjacent to that first floor vehicular access point, same thing over here. And you could programmatically say it makes more sense to have it down here, but we also didn't want the trash and move in adjacent to like the vehicular drop access point. So there is an inconvenience factor in terms of maybe having to walk a little further to get down to this, but we thought it was better than having it at the front door.
Chair Loveland.
Please.
So do these units, and maybe it's too early to even notice that, but just thinking about the water and the water pressures that we have and the problems with water pressure we have, do they have like washer dryer facilities in each one of these?
We do provide washers and dryers and everything. And it's up to Ryan to make sure we have good water pressure. So he'll do a great job.
Well, you
Very
you
confident.
can come to my house too, because I need
Mine
to.
too.
We would utilize water boosters if necessary to maintain pressure.
Any other questions? Board members?
I think they did a great first pass.
Good.
Like I said, we'll test some material options and see what we come up with and maybe some Cordis details or something on there.
Thank you all for the interactive back and forth. It's really helpful for us to give us direction on how to move.
Thank you. All right. If we're through with that part of the agenda, maybe turn to the next thing we had in the agenda and maybe just ask Wichita to kind of introduce this topic of comments regarding the role of the architectural review.
Sure.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you. You guys are-
You guys want to stick around?
Yeah, another exciting. They're trying to get us in the architecture review board. Yeah, they live in Wildwood.
Okay. Okay, so as some of you may or may not be aware, there have been discussions at the city council about the future role of the Architecture Review Board within the city. And for those of you that are not aware, we wanted to provide you with some background information. So as all of you have witnessed, and as I've witnessed in the short period of time that I've had a bit of turnover on this board and had some difficulty filling the positions. And a couple years ago, the city attempted to fix that issue or at least help with that issue by lowering or expanding the requirements, the qualifications for architectural review board members. And that hasn't helped a whole lot. So unfortunately, it hasn't made it so much easier to fulfill the positions. And meanwhile, architecture itself, like the complexity of the projects, the techniques, the materials and such have only multiplied, grown. And so additionally, although the Architecture Review Board has been an integral part of developing the land use process and, developing town center and everything, the role has changed for ARB over the years here. And now it's primarily reviewing individual projects and things along those lines, site developments, as opposed to, you know, the entirety of the city and land use plans and stuff like that. And most of these applications, you know, such as this, also go before at least one other board, commission, committee, subcommittee, something along those lines. And throughout the approval process, and that creates a little redundancy in our process, which a lot of people already find to be a very lengthy process as it is. So that being said, there is actually gonna be a public hearing scheduled before the Planning and Zoning Commission in January to discuss the ARB's current role and future role for the city, which will include potentially dissolving the Architectural Review Board and making this review part of the planning and zoning process, or maybe a subcommittee or something along those lines. And so the public hearing is, you know, to get public comment, to get a conversation going, and so the department felt that given that this impacts the board directly, thought that it would be good for you to know exactly what's going on and that there's a public hearing coming up. And we also wanted to make it very clear that this is absolutely by no means any kind of reflection of the service that this board provides. I mean, as demonstrated tonight in this conversation, you know, you have always provided valuable insight, information, contributions to projects, and the city very much so appreciates that. It's just trying to figure out if there's a better way of doing things at this point. And so there will be a discussion to be had, but this is the first step in the process. And, you know, the city is seeking input regarding that. And with that concludes the department's presentation. However, if you have any questions, I will be happy to do my very best to answer them. And or if you happen to leave the meeting tonight and have thoughts, insight, comments, anything that you know, would like to express to the department, you know, as not part of a public meeting, or, you know, you are absolutely positively welcome to send those to myself or Ms. Keefe. And so that being said, we are available for any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, I was hoping we'll get.
Ready to go home
Wait,
with dinner.
the meeting again? Or the
So-
public hearing?
Oh, so the public hearing will be at the planning and zoning meeting in January. So I believe it's January 2nd because of New Year's Day. It's usually the first Monday of the month. And so, yes, there'll be a public hearing at that level. And it did, the discussion happened at city council this past Monday. So there's a staff report attached to that online and or the video available if you'd like to watch it. Absolutely.
Ms. Clark?
Can you just go over the options that were for taking it to a different committee, or, you know, like, will it go to planning and zoning and be on the agenda, or possibility of a subcommittee, or, you know, what are the options?
So, yeah, those are details that will still need to be ironed out and will be, you know, probably the product of these conversations that are happening. But yes, things that have been discussed are doing some sort of subcommittee of the planning and zoning. And there's been talk of either including it in the agenda as part of that review, or having a subcommittee that meets before or at a different time, kind of like the development zoning review situation. And or if need be, you know, hiring a consultant, you know, that could provide input on specific projects at a specific time. So I believe that's all of the options that have been tossed around thus far.
Mr. Ritter? Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, there is a timeout? Length of time on the board and then you're timed out?
Yes, so we do have term limits, and that definitely limits the number of architects that we can
It sure is.
have on the board. That is for sure. But even without requiring an architect, I mean, it's been challenging. I think we have 2 vacancies right now. And so it is. So it's-
Comments, Ms. Clark?
Is that a charter issue that we'd have to go to the voters for if we changed anything with that?
the Architecture Review Board, I don't believe so.
I thought what you had in the package showed it was simply statutory, but I don't know.
That it was what?
It's statutory. In other words, it was created by city ordinance and not in the charter, but I don't know that.
I believe it was created by ordinance, but I don't think it's in the charter.
Yeah.
I could be mistaken, but I believe that that's the case. And so I think that it would just be a matter of dissolving the board, which has happened with other boards and committees throughout the year as they haven't been needed for whatever's been going on at the time. But yes.
Other comments or questions? I'll call on Mr. Cohen. I think he has a motion.
I'm sorry,
I think you had a motion.
to adjourn.
Okay, the motion is there a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.